My whole career has been about bringing people together to address tough problems. As President of the United States, the whole theme of my campaign is this idea that we need to heal this country, start reminding people that the lines that divide us are not nearly as strong as the ties that bind us. This country has to get back to a sense of common cause and common purpose. That's what's driving me to run. I believe that we can't be a nation of liberty and justice for all if we don't put more indivisible back into this one nation under God.
Since his early days in politics, Cory Booker has been known to take more selfies than Kim Kardashian. Now on the campaign trail, Booker's selfie game has only gotten stronger. Though national polls show the junior senator from New Jersey at just 2%, his popularity in the Palmetto state remains high. And as long as he continues to generate enthusiasm among South Carolina's black voters, Cory Booker is still a contender. During a recent campaign swing through Columbia, Booker drew an enthusiastic crowd of considerable size. He laid out several policy proposals and made the case for his conciliatory approach to politics. Fellow reporter Thelisha Eady and I caught up with Booker and asked him to delve deeper into why he's still in the game.
So one of the great things about having this really long campaign trail is that it's allowing South Carolinians to talk about a lot of the issues that's plaguing communities here. And one here in Richland County and like many counties is gun violence. Can you talk a little bit about what your policy would do if elected president, how it would help communities like the ones here in Richland County where they are almost every week they're struggling from another violence-related crime?
So I just want folks to know before they hear my policy to know my passion on this issue. I'm the only person in the United States Senate, the only person who's running for president right now that lives in a community like this, where we see shootings in our community all too often. I had a Shahad Smith who I watched grow up. She was murdered on my block last year. And so for me, this is not a policy issue. This is a personal passion to end this nightmare where just in my lifetime, we've had more people die due to gun violence, majority of which are in communities like ours, than have died in every single war combined from the Revolutionary War to now. And this is something that is just not talked about enough. We see grievous, heinous, unimaginable mass shootings, but every single day in communities, low-income communities in this country, communities of color, we see people being murdered. I've been to too many funerals. I've literally sat at the side of a boy who was bleeding to death trying to stop him from dying, and he died. So these are traumatizing things. These wounds are deep and they are not healed, even though murders are many years ago in the past. They still live in communities, and we have to do something about it. As President of the United States, there will never have been a president that's more charged up and focused on this goal than me. And we have an incredible plan that's on my website, corybooker.com, evidence-based measures that will drive down shootings like gun licensing, which is common sense to have a license to drive a car, to own and possess a firearms. There should be licensing, like banning assault rifles, like making sure we're investing in communities that are suffering from this kind of violent crime. There are evidence-based interventions that we know can lower the rates of violence. And so that's the kind of fight that I'm going to bring, and I'm going to bring that kind of fight that the corporate gun lobby and NRA that might want to stand in the way of change has ever seen before. I will be the president that gets this done.
Senator Booker, I wanted to know your thoughts on the current situation with the impeachment process. Do you believe we should be trying to get rid of Trump through impeachment or defeat him at the polls in 2020?
I think we have got to separate these things. Okay. We have got to separate them. I am determined to beat Donald Trump as a Democratic nominee, to defeat him, not in the name of the Democratic Party, but in all of us who want this country to be healed and united and back, focused on common cause and common aspiration. But the impeachment proceedings going on right now, they should be viewed as with sadness. Sadness. I don't care what party you're in. This is a sobering time for our nation, and we need to leave partisanship aside and focus on patriotism. As a United States Senator, I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. This president has potentially betrayed that oath in a national security situation. In other words, withholding funding to a nation that's an ally of ours, that's under attack from the Russians, who are also attacking our democracy, to withhold that funding and use it as leverage to achieve personal political interests is outrageous, unacceptable. I think it's not only a violation of your oath, but a violation of the law. And so right now, This investigation must continue, and we must get to the truth. The public deserves the truth, and that's what I'm going to focus on right now. I don't know what's influence on elections, but the course of history, the long look of history, is going to look back on this moment and say, what did we do when a president was potentially violating his oath, violating the Constitution, and violating the law? Was he above the law, or did we hold him accountable? This impeachment proceedings is about holding him to account.
Our mayor recently tweeted about you, and he talked about how you are a strong candidate, or you're bringing strong messaging to this campaign. You're still not polling in the double digits here in South Carolina. We have a very significant and large African American bloc within the Democratic Party. What do you think your campaign has brought to this campaign trail that you think will make you stand out a little bit more to our voters here?
Well, the great thing about this election is you said there's a long way to go, and we should know about the polls. At this point in the Democratic Party primary, never before in my lifetime has anybody who's been leading in the polls ever gone on to the White House. Think about it. It was Jimmy Carter was barely polling at 1% at this time. It was Bill Clinton who was polling in the low single digits. Even Barack Obama was about 20 points behind Hillary Clinton here in South Carolina, with a majority of black elected in the primaries. So the polls don't bother me. What we're doing, though, which is what Bill Clinton did, what Barack Obama did, is we're just organizing. We're getting on the ground and using the many months we have until the primary to let folks get to know who I am, and that I've been a leader that's been leading, fighting, and winning on issues from criminal justice reform. The only major bipartisan bill to pass underneath this president in this Congress was the one that I led for criminal justice reform from the United States Senate, that has already liberated thousands of people from prison, that I've been fighting to drive investment into communities like ours, fighting for historically black colleges and universities, fighting for public education. When people get to know the kind of fights I've taken on, the kind of battles we've won together, and they get to understand the spirit I'm bringing to the White House, will bring to the White House, I think we're going to get a lot more support, as Barack Obama did when it wasn't until January, February that he started leading here in the polls.
Wanted to know your position on reparations has evolved, with 75% of African Americans in America supporting reparation. Can you tell me a little bit about how that position has evolved on reparations?
Well, I don't think it's evolved. I think it's always been the case that we are a nation that believes in justice and restorative justice. Mm-hmm. And right now we have hundreds of years of design policies to undermine the economic well-being of African Americans, whether it's the original sin of slavery all the way through what we see now, mass incarceration. There's no difference between blacks and whites for using drugs or selling drugs, but African Americans are almost 4 times more likely to be arrested for that. We have major racial disparities in incarceration, which means that it's an economic impact, because when you get out of prison for doing things that 2 of the last 3 presidents admitted to doing, now you can't get a job, you can't get a business license, has a real economic impact on you and your family. And so this is about restorative justice and about finding a way not to help black people only, but to create an economy that works for everybody, because when African Americans do better, everybody does better. And so I'm actually the leader on the bill in the Senate to picks up the House bill and says, let's study this issue. Let's bring the best minds in America together to study how we can address those past harms and create a more equal and just nation. I'm proud to be sponsoring that legislation in the Senate, and already, though, I'm not waiting. I have one of the bills right now that I'm leading called Baby Bonds, one of the only ones that addresses in a significant way the racial disparities in incarceration. It says that every child born in America, everyone, black or white or whatever your background, gets an interest-bearing account with $1,000 in it. And that account will grow every year with upwards of $2,000 placed in it every year, depending upon the income of your family. With the lowest income kids in America getting to be 18 with about $50,000 to invest in buying a home, starting a business, going to college. That bill alone was looked at by Columbia University and says it virtually collapses the racial wealth gap in our country. We need real solutions, things that actually make us a more equal and just society. That's what I've been fighting for. That's what I'll continue to lead with as President of the United States.
We've seen a lot of gridlock in Congress, and I think it's kind of taken the wind out of a lot of people's sails and made a lot of people a little frustrated,
yes,
with the way our system is working, or seems to be working. If elected, what would you do? What do you have planned to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore, and folks here in South Carolina South Carolina won't be as frustrated when they're watching the news?
Well, one of the best ways to know what somebody's going to do in the future is to see what they've been doing in the present and the past. So I have a big reputation in the Senate about getting things done across partisan lines. I've gotten bills passed with your senator here, Tim Scott. He and I did a bill now to drive a lot of investment to the lowest income areas in South Carolina as well as across this country. I got criminal justice reform done. Heck, just a few weeks ago I passed a bill through the Senate that got millions of dollars freed up for states all over America to get lead service lines out of the ground so we can reduce the level of lead in kids' blood. So my whole career has been about bringing people together to address tough problems. As President of the United States, the whole theme of my campaign is this idea that we need to heal this country, start reminding people that the lines that divide us are not as nearly as strong as the ties that bind us. This country has to get back to a sense of common cause and common purpose. That's what's driving me to run. I believe that we can't be a nation of liberty and justice for all if we don't put more indivisible back into this one nation under God. Thank you.
Thank you so much.